Welcome back to the Journeys in Business series. I'm Jess, owner of Jess Creatives, and in this series, I'm sitting down with entrepreneurs to hear about their journeys in business and lessons they have learned. Hey Kayla, thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. It's going to be so fun to chat with you and to connect with some of your audience members too, so I can't wait.
Yes, so to kick us off, why don't you tell us about what you do?
Oh man. So what I do, I'm sure as a lot of you can understand, has totally evolved. I really started my online journey as a blogger back when I was in college, and I was blogging about all things PR and social media since that's really my background. And it wasn't really until I launched my Twitter chat under hashtag Create Lounge back in January of 2014, which seems so crazy now. Really wasn't until then that I started to really see that, there is something to this online business world. And I actually think that, I can jump into this. And so I took the leap really into my full-time business last April. And at that time, my business was really built to be a coaching business. And so it was a lot more to do with strategy, but I was really helping online business owners as well as some bloggers at the time who really wanted to build a community and a tribe around what they were offering. And it really just helped to, of course, add in a little bit more of the heart behind their business and have people kind of rally around a community and a message. But of course, it also helped people's bottom lines because they were able to retain customers and acquire more customers as well. And so I really enjoyed doing that, but it really wasn't until kind of the end of last year that I realized, and I still remember the time that I said out loud, like, all I want to do is write. And I found myself, for whatever reason, kind of doing all these other things that I felt like I kind of had to be doing in order to kind of run this full-time business.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that, oh my gosh, really, I'm running away from the thing I really want to do. And of course, that thing can sometimes be scary, of course, because writing is a very vulnerable act. But it's been really great to get back to my start, which is, again, in social media and strategy and brand marketing, but more importantly, copywriting. So I'm a copywriter and brand strategist now. I just recently relaunched, and it's just been so incredible just to see really how much my business, even in these first few months of kind of announcing this transition and telling people, hey, this is what I'm doing now. It's just so great that it feels as much of a fit for everybody else as it does for me, because that was really important.
Yeah. So how did you get the idea or to do your Twitter chat?
Oh my gosh. So I had actually been participating in Twitter chats before I started my own while I was in college for probably about a year and a half. So I was definitely kind of a little bit of a veteran participant, right? So I totally loved it. And I loved just being able to jump on and actually talk with people live, because I had been using Twitter for quite a while back then, but I always saw, of course, when you're trying to make kind of those relationships with Twitter, it's kind of difficult because sometimes somebody is talking to you and they're replying back right away, and then other times it takes a few days and everybody it. But it's just really nice to be able to have that collective of people that are all talking about a similar thing and finding like-minded people. So at the time, there were no Twitter chats for creative bloggers and entrepreneurs, and I couldn't believe it. And I really wanted to do something about it because I knew that I needed something like that to exist. So I thought, well, maybe there are other people that need that as well. And so it's kind of insane to me that we're going into our third year. Nothing that I ever thought would happen. And Create Lounge really has changed just the entire path of not only my business, but my life as well. And so it's just interesting to see how a Twitter chat has grown into something just so much more.
Yes, because now you have like your own website and the Create Lounge podcast and book club, right?
Yes, and a contributor blog now.
Yeah,
okay.
Most people are like, oh, I have this Twitter chat. Here you go, like come every Thursday. And no, Kayla's like, no, we're gonna like do Twitter chat on steroids. And we're gonna like entire brand out of this, which is so awesome. Like I see it always fills up my feed. I am a grandma and I go to bed really early. And so that's why I have not participated very much over the years, but like, it's just like from an outside perspective, I can totally see the community that has formed around it, and like how many people love it, and like it really can see how it's helped you grow your business. And like, I love Twitter. I know some people are like, Twitter's dying. I don't like Twitter. I don't understand Twitter. And I'm like,
I won't let it die.
no, I'm like, I love Twitter. I love it. And even though I may not do that many Twitter chats anymore, it's like one of my favorite platforms. And
yeah, I totally love it.
So like, even though like you said, how it's like some people respond instantly, some are like 12 hours later, which sometimes I'm that person. It just like, for me, it almost feels more personal sometimes. Like, I feel like sometimes it's like texting.
Sure.
You like to the world. I'm texting the world at
yeah
every few hours.
And I mean, I feel like it's really easy to build relationships on something like Twitter because you only have 140 characters. And so you don't really have to overthink like an introduction to a person, right? And I also think Twitter is almost kind of that like great equalizer, because I was able to connect with people that I feel like if the only way I could have connected with them was through an email or something like that, I would have maybe shied away or maybe like, oh, I'm not far enough along to like ask them something or make that connection, and those sorts of like fraudy feelings that always come up. I think Twitter is such a great place for those to kind of be dispelled, because again, you know, like somebody saying, hello, I'd love to hear more about what you do is going to be the same as anybody else, no matter what level you perceive yourself to be on. So I love it for those reasons.
Yeah. And I'm also biased towards Twitter because over the years, I've won several things over Twitter. Like, I won like a restaurant gift card and like a book.
There you go.
Like random little things like that. And then because of Twitter, I actually got to work with someone who was once on The Biggest Loser. That's like,
oh, interesting.
The closest I've ever come to working with a celebrity. I mean, she kind of is, but not like A-list. But and like simply just because I followed her on Twitter and she just happened to follow me back. And this was like, I followed her several years ago when she was like on the show. So a long time. And she just happened to follow me back way back when. And then fast forward to last year and she hired me, and I was like, all because of Twitter. I'm not giving Twitter up. I'm staying.
Yes.
Like, Twitter better not die. Like, it's just all these fun things that have happened on Twitter. I mean, that's how you and I connected, was on Twitter.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's so interesting to see how many people are able to really just leverage not only Twitter, but just like all different platforms. Because I know when I started my blog, I leveraged my Twitter to somehow be able to, it not only allowed me to get all my internships, which I had like 5 or 6 during college, which is kind of crazy, but it also helped me to where when I got out of college, I had a few agencies who were interested in interviewing me. And without my blog and without Twitter, there's no way anybody would have even known who I was, you know? So it's so interesting to see that not only can you use it like for the career and those sorts of things, but you can also use it to, make really genuine relationships and, that turn into those client relationships too. And I always see that a lot of the times when, of course, you're talking with somebody on social media, and then you end up kind of, partnering together for client work and stuff, it's such a beautiful just kind of collaboration and that project, because you've already kind of had this foundation of a relationship beforehand. And so there's just something really special about it.
Yeah. Also, fun fact, you just reminded me, probably the coolest thing when I was in college, I got my internship because of Twitter, because I followed several designers from Atlanta because I was not living here. And I was like, maybe one of them will like tweet about a job or something. And sure enough, one did. And it actually is the husband of Erin Eddy of So Worth Living.
Oh my gosh.
He tweeted about this internship, and I was like, you okay? And I applied, and I got it at I happened to see the tweet at the right time, like totally random. So that's another thing that I've gotten from Twitter.
I love it. We're just like Twitter sisters over here. Like, yes.
So what is your favorite part about what you do?
Oh my gosh. I would say, especially with this transition into doing more, copywriting and content creation for my clients, I would say my favorite part is really when my clients come back to me after I send them kind of that first draft of their copy, and for them to come to me and say, oh my gosh, like this sounds just like me, but in a way that I never could have put down on paper myself. And so for me, that's like the huge moment where, I like love to just sit and revel in that moment, because it's so cool to be able to kind of uncover the brand voice of all of these different clients and in so many different creative industries. But it's really rewarding.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, because I often because people, they're like, I have this idea for what I want my logo or whatever to look like. And they're like, I don't know how to vocalize what I want. And then I send them ideas and they're like, oh my gosh, yeah, like, how did you do that? I'm like, magic. I don't know. But yeah. So what would you say is your big why in your business?
Wow. Well, I would say, I really do feel that my calling just in life is to bring communities together through storytelling. And so I think you see that, of course, through my business, but also through Create Lounge. And the really beautiful thing is that I used to kind of get stuck in feeling like, oh, well, my assignment, right? My current assignment keeps changing, and everything looks a little bit different depending on the year and the stage of my life. But I think the beautiful thing again is that the calling just kind of roots everything together. And so right now that looks like running a copywriting and content creation business that really helps my clients dig into their communities and their storytelling and all of those things and blending them together. But it also looks like running Create Lounge. And I don't know what either of those things is going to look like a year or two from now, but I'm really excited about this current assignment. And I know that no matter what ends up happening, I can always kind of sit and be really thankful about the fact that I feel like I'm more connected with exactly what it is that kind of weaves together all of those things in my life.
Yeah. I'm just calling you now. I totally see you writing a book in the future about like community and Twitter and business. And I'm gonna order a copy.
Well, definitely know that I may or may not have a few different outlines about said book.
Okay, we'll see.
We'll see. I'm kind of, there's no like quote unquote right time to necessarily write anything, but I did self-publish my own poetry collection almost 2 years ago. And so I feel like I kind of was able to dip my toes into what the book writing process kind of is like, and learned a lot in the process. So, I guess we'll see what happens, but I'm kind of waiting for that really kind of heart-centered moment when I'm like, okay, I feel like this is the story I want to tell.
Yeah. So your poetry book, that was kind of a passion side project, right? So can you talk about like the idea behind that and why you did it?
Sure. So actually, I say that I started blogging back when, I started my first PR blog and Twitter and did all the things. But really, my first technical blog was when I was writing poetry online. And that was kind of my first way of sharing a little bit more about myself. And I think that's why I've been able to be so vulnerable in my business and with my community, is because I really got the practice back when I was, writing and sharing all of my poetry, because that's a very vulnerable art form. And so I never ever set out to write a book. I actually was a kid and I always knew that I wanted to write, but I never ever thought that I could be an author, because I learned really early on that my brain doesn't necessarily work in a way where I do really well with plots and character development and all of those things. I'm much better at just being able to take a moment in time and kind of write something that's, as powerful as can be in as short of words as possible. So I've always been a very concise kind of writer. And so it's just very interesting, because I still think that poetry is what has helped me be so successful with Twitter, because like with short form poetry you can only do so much in so many words, and that's kind of the same thing as Twitter. And so I loved that passion project. I worked with an amazing illustrator named Hannah Lewis in the UK, and the whole fact that we were able to collaborate together, you know, where we feel like we're worlds away from each other. But we were collaborating back when I was in college. So it was just a really amazing project to kind of put my all into, but also at a time where I was juggling 2 internships and school and a full-time job and all these other things. It was kind of that safe haven at the time. And so I'm just a huge fan of passion projects in general. That's really kind of the mission and the heart behind Create Lounge, is making time and room in your schedule for creativity in your everyday life, regardless of if you're working full-time at a company or whether you're working full-time for yourself. It's all about just making room for doing the things you really just want to do.
Yeah. I did a few, I haven't done a personal project in a year or two, but I have done a few, and one I also turned into a book. And it's crazy, like how just personal projects, like they always start kind of simple, and like I've only had one that turned into a book, and then the others were just little series, and then like, okay, done. Was that little chapter. But they are like, it's just, one of the first ones I did was when I was still working full time, and I was just like, I don't like what I'm designing at work. I want to be more creative and do what I want to do. And so even though like no one bought my prints or anything, like people seeing me consistently put out work, they were like, oh, can you do XYZ? And I'd be like, yeah. So it was a super fun project and a really good outlet, like you said, to like actually do what I wanted to do. And then it also just really helps my business on top of that.
Absolutely.
So I always tell people, like, do a personal project when you're trying to grow your business, or if you're just feeling really stuck and like uncreative or, you know, whatever in your business.
Yeah. I mean, I love that you said that too, because it seems a little bit counterintuitive, because a lot of times, if people are feeling stuck in their career or in their business or whatever, they feel like they should take on more career development or more professional development. And a lot of times it's so amazing. I mean, you can't even plan exactly what a personal project can really do for you. But I think that's the beauty of it. Is when you are willing to just kind of embrace it for what it is and not feel like it has to turn into something, or, you know, that it's something that's really just for you. And regardless of what the end result is, I mean, you're going to learn so much about yourself in the process in a way that you never could have if you were just focused on kind of like that bottom line and those sorts of things. Yeah.
Like one of mine that I did, so I used to do photography and design. And one of the projects that I did a few years ago was it combined typography and photography. And I learned through that I didn't like doing photography as in like portraits and weddings like I had been doing. And it was too much. I didn't like the pressure of actual photography. And I was like, I still love photography. I want to do it as a like just passion. And I learned that through taking all these pictures for this passion project. And I finally was like, okay, like this kind of showed me that, because I was out taking pictures of like plants and trees, like really, you know, fascinating things. And that was like, it reminded me, because that's how I kind of got started in photography when I was in like junior high, and the only thing you have to take pictures of is like plants and flowers. And it just reminded me, like, this is how I got started. And even though I did enjoy the other side of photography for a while, I was like, it just I wasn't in it anymore. And so then I just cut it. And so that's how, you know, that personal project showed me that and allowed me to finally cut something for my business that just was not serving me well. So
yeah. And I mean, I think that's such an important thing. And of course, you know, in this transition, I've had to do some of that as well. But I think you really just have to practice a lot of self-trust and just understanding of, if something really is not feeling right, you can't just keep going with it. Like, you have to do something about it, because you either, you know, catch it now when you're kind of starting to wrestle with it and you can kind of figure it out and reflect on it, or you're going to end up, of course, you know, hitting that burnout stage, which I think all of us have kind of been there. And it's a lot harder to get yourself and pull yourself out of that than it is for you to kind of notice some of those red flags. I know for myself, I have a lot of those kind of like little tells to where I know when something kind of needs to shift and change, and then figuring out exactly what that is.
Yeah. So what, if you could go back and tell yourself something from when you first started your business,
Oh my gosh.
what would you tell yourself?
Oh my gosh. I feel like I would have many words.
It's a long coffee chat with
right?
former self.
Yes. I mean, I think I would tell myself that even though I don't have a background in business, that does not mean that I can't run a business. I know a lot of the times I felt like, my family and my friends, I mean, they definitely know that I come from, more of a creative mentality than I do necessarily the numbers and sense of a business. But I think a lot of times I almost held myself back from some of those things, and from looking at the numbers as much as I should have, and from, creating business systems and putting those things in place, because, I just told myself, oh, well, that's not necessarily like what I'm most natural at. And, I've had to work really, really hard at that. It's not something that necessarily comes super easily to me. But I think the great thing, of course, about being a boss is that sometimes you have to wear those hats that aren't as like snug as, of a fit. But to me, those are when I have my boss moments. I love being able to launch creative projects and do awesome things in my community, and that gives me a lot of light. But my real, true, proud, like boss moments are when I get over those fears of, oh, I didn't think that I could have created like this client onboarding system that works this smoothly, but I did. And now I'm getting great feedback from my clients about it. And to me, that's when, those are those moments where I would say, Kayla, just do them a lot sooner. Like, just dive into it. And it's okay that you don't know everything, and you're going to figure it out anyway.
Yeah. I think a lot of business is just trial and error and figuring it out. It's like, cause I don't have a background in business. I didn't even it was never like, growing up. I never thought like, oh, I'm going to own my own business someday.
Sure.
Even when I started to freelance in college, it was like, oh, when I'm like 50, I'll own my own business. Like literally I was like, in 25 years, I'll do that.
Yeah.
Like in 2 years. And I was like, oh, okay. That happened a lot sooner. But I think that's kind of something that a lot of business owners relate to, is just figuring it out and like, okay, I'm going to try this and it might fail, but you never know if you don't try.
Absolutely. And one of the things I love that you said is, you were kind of thinking, oh, well, maybe I'll do freelance, like once I, like pay my dues and all those things. And once I've got this amount of experience and those sorts of things. And that's something that I struggled with too, is that, I don't come from a long line of entrepreneurs by any reason. I'm kind of, like a first generation entrepreneur. And
Me
so
too.
it's very interesting because it's not something that I necessarily grew up around. And so I've really kind of been trying to teach myself along the way of kind of what this all looks like. But a lot of me felt like, well, do I even deserve to be able to take this leap? I really had prepared for it mentally, financially. I had done all of those things, but I still had that in the back of my mind of, do I have enough experience quite yet? Or am I still too young? Do I have to put in more time at like PR agencies and those sorts of things just to say that I was able to get that experience? And it's just so interesting how some of those really small things that we look back at now really do hold us back. And something as silly as age should never hold a person back.
Yeah.
It's silly now.
Yeah. I had some of those same thoughts when I was wanting to quit my day job and go full time. I was like, I'm only 24, and like, I don't know if I'm ready. Like, that's smart. Like, I remember feeling like, is this smart? Like, not just from like a financial standpoint, but I, like you said, like, do I need more experience? Am I supposed to like be in the corporate world longer? I just remember being like, but I'm only 24. And I don't know if I'm supposed to, like, am I allowed to do this? When I first started really like freelancing out after college and trying to grow my business, I didn't know any other entrepreneurs. Like, I didn't know a single person. And then I joined a Facebook group, and there were other freelancers, and there were a few people in there who were already working for themselves full time. And I was like, what? what? Wait, people worked, because I grew up in a really small town, and so I didn't know entrepreneur. I guess, people in that town were technically entrepreneurs, but I didn't think of them like that. But I was like, wait, there are people my age
who are doing the thing?
What?
And doing it well and getting paid for it?
Wait a minute. And that just goes back to like how much I love like social media and online communities, because it's like I just think about how little I knew 4 or 5 years ago, and like all the people I've met and how much others have taught me, and I'm like, thank you. Yes. Thank you to all the long list of people who have helped me over the last few years and like opened my eyes to online business world, because thank God I am not in corporate world anymore.
Right. No, I feel that way too. And I think one of the crazy things is, it's such a different world, I think, for people who are kind of getting into the, blogging for monetization now, as well as online business. And it looks, I don't know about you, but Jessica, it looks a lot different than when I think we're first coming on the scene. And so, I am glad that I was able to kind of grow my blog and transition pretty naturally into some blog monetization, and now, really running a service-based business. And I really love that transition, but I think it's so interesting to see just how people are kind of getting in, at kind of different floors of kind of where they want to be in their business or their blog. And there's so many different, of course, like income streams and different things that you can try. And so, the experimenter in me loves that. And I love, experimenting with all the things. And for me, last year, 2016 was all about experiment. I told myself, I don't feel like I want to have it all figured out that year. I really just wanted to give myself that space of, okay, from April to December, you can launch the things you want to launch, try the things, try to get as much feedback as you can, do a whole lot of heart checks to see how you're actually enjoying things. And I don't think without that kind of like buffer of a year to just try the things, that I would have been able to kind of go into this new season that I'm in now, where I have never felt so confident about anything in my life, my business. And it came from basically like trying to see what was going to stick out there. But a lot of people don't quite get to that point because they get so stuck kind of in that planning stage and trying to figure everything out. And for me, I just think it's so important just to start somewhere.
Yeah. So you and I, 2016 was a big year of trying new things for me too. Do you mind sharing, did all of your things go well? All of your new experience? You don't have to go into,
right? Like, oh,
you don't have to go into specific
story, but oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, I found a lot of things that worked and that didn't work, of course, but I think the really awesome thing that I learned was that even if something from the outside worked, it didn't necessarily work if it didn't really fit with my kind of like time commitment and what I wanted my lifestyle to look like. And that's something really big that I had to learn, especially like with the Create Lounge podcast. I pressed the pause button for the podcast, at least for Q1 and probably Q2 of this year, because I had been creating weekly episodes since May. And I'm like you, I'm kind of a one-woman team. So with kind of doing that, it was really difficult from a timing standpoint, because there's a lot of time, as I'm sure you know, that goes into all of the parts that make a podcast run. And so even though I still get lots of, emails from people who love the podcast and who want to be on the podcast, and it's such an amazing platform and I love it, I had to take a look at like, how am I feeling in this moment right now? And I felt so drained. And I kept trying to talk myself into like, oh, but you love it because you love the people and you love talking and sharing other people's stories. But I really had to just be real with myself and say, it's okay that this is kind of draining my energy a little bit more than it's refueling it. So maybe I take a little bit of a break, reassess some things. And I've really learned that the biggest thing is just to tell people why it's going on. I've made so many different transitions in my life and my business and all of those things. But I think the reason why people actually can still stick around even throughout all of it is because I share the story of why in the world I'm even making these transitions and doing these things. And I think when people hear that story behind it, they start to understand, okay, we get why she's kind of making a shift now, maybe to a contributor blog, because she's able to kind of fit it a little bit more into her lifestyle than maybe the podcast was allowing her to do. And so again, it's just all of these things of just kind of learning not only what fits your lifestyle right now, but for me, it's huge to think about what I want my lifestyle and my business to be, so I can keep working towards that and build something that's going to end up fitting in with that lifestyle, so I don't have to completely change it over time. So
I love that. Like, that was amazing. I just want to like write that on my wall or something. Because I think a lot of us, I mean, even me, that like, yes, this is helping my business, or this is something I'm supposed to quote unquote do, but it doesn't feel good. It's not fueling me. It doesn't fit my lifestyle. I have to work longer, or like, it's just not fun. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs like keep doing things that they feel like they're supposed to do because they're too afraid to quit and be like, this didn't work. This didn't fit me. Where, like you said, it's just be open about it and share it, and people aren't going to be like, I mean, has anybody emailed you and been like, you are an awful person for quitting?
Oh my gosh, no. Like,
exactly.
And of course, like in my mind, I totally thought that was going to happen, because I mean, that was really, I mean, with the podcast, that was the first time that I really kind of took away something that was really successful and that my community really loved. And so I probably had more fear around that than any other transition that I've made so far, because I knew that so many people just enjoyed listening to them. And I was terrified that people were going to be like, oh, well, this community, whatever, she's getting rid of like this huge hub of content that we have. But, you know, I still was really smart about, you know, what are the other ways that we can maybe help other people still share their stories and their platforms, but just in a way that's going to be a little bit easier for me in the back end. And of course, you know, and it's been so incredible so far, not only for just my time commitment in the back end, but also because, you know, we have so many people who want to share their blog posts and in their stories and those sorts of things. And so, I mean, maybe sometime in the future we'll do a podcast. I mean, something like this, a video podcast, I think would be such an amazing thing to do. But again, I'm just giving myself that space and that time. And it's something I've never really given myself before, but last season when I was going through just kind of a tumultuous time of trying to figure out exactly like where my business is going to go, how Create Lounge fits into that, what the relationship is. And really wasn't until I just gave myself that extra time. You know, it really took me about 2 to 3 months to really figure out exactly what my direction was going to be. But now I feel like, you know, I can really hit the ground running this year, and I feel really great about it. And so, yeah, my advice for anybody listening who kind of feels like they're at that point right now where they don't really know what their direction is, kind of just give yourself some of that space to not know what it's going to be. And then anything that kind of comes up in the meantime, journal it out. Like, journaling has saved my life. I love just being able to, just reflect on everything, and also have kind of a record of all of the, of course, crazy ideas that I've had in my community and my business. But everything, you know, you can start to connect the dots and see how everything kind of relates to one another.
Love that. Such a good lesson. I love that so much. That could be like a whole blog post, I think, if you don't already have one. So is there anything you wish you had done differently over the last few years?
Oh, done differently. I mean, I think a huge thing would be to just give myself some space to kind of not have it all figured out. That's one thing. Then another thing, of course, is the whole, you know, kind of like numbers piece of being so kind of worried about not necessarily fitting the, like what a business owner should look like and those sorts of things. But also just like, I wish I would have gone a lot deeper into just all of those kind of like business foundational pieces of like the systems and the, you know, it actually making investments in yourself. And that's always been something that I've struggled with a lot of, like, you know, like how worthy am I of like investing in myself in a certain dollar amount, even when it's something as simple as a tool or something to run your business. But again, I've been kind of inching myself towards like, you know, investments that I feel like I really need to make. And then once I see that those are so necessary and wonderful, then it helps me make some more of those investments. I'm like, okay, I still feel like I need to make this one. And since that one was really positive and it's been so worth it, let's kind of try this one out. So that's just the big thing. I think that's the biggest thing, at least right now, that's coming to my head that I wish I would have done a lot sooner, is kind of investing in those tools and the different things that I really need in order to really run my business smoothly.
Yeah. I remember the first like year or two of when I was starting to really grow my business before I went full time. And it was like, I was so scared to pay for any, like, I think for like the first year, the only thing I was paying
for real
was my website and domain, and that was it. Like,
yes,
it took me a long time to even just get my email address, like my branded email address, because I didn't have to pay for that.
Oh my God, I'm the exact same way. I was like, do I have to get rid of my Gmail address? I like held on for dear life as long as I could, but
and I was just, and now I'm like, I mean, not that I'm just like frivolously spending money, but it's like everything, I'm like, how is this going to impact my business? Like, is this a really good investment? Like, how is it going to help me or help my clients or, you know, whatever. And now it's like, oh, okay. Like, I mean, most of the time there are still some scary investments. Like, I just think about, like, I remember the first course I bought, and it was like $127 or something. And that's when I was still working full time. And I was like,
$100 so big, right?
$127. And I'm like, now I spend that on fonts in 1 month. Like, no, but I mean, it's crazy how like those small investments start to really add up, not in a numbers way, but add up and like really impact your business and help you just as a person and, you know, your clients and all that.
Absolutely. Yes, it's so true. And especially the investments that I've been making kind of in running those business systems more smoothly. I mean, I have such a hard time even just thinking back to like 2 or 3 months ago when I wasn't using some of those tools and I didn't have that system set up for onboarding and those sorts of things. I mean, I think my business would have collapsed, honestly, without it. And it's hard because to me, I'm such a, like, I come from, you know, the online marketing world. So to me, I'm all about like the sexy campaigns and all of like the really fun launches and putting so much thought into the sales funnels and all of those things. But none of that is really great if all of your business systems behind the scenes really suck. Completely honest. So I just really had, you know, it was great with this relaunch process because I told myself, before I do photos, before I design my website, before I work with a designer on the logo, before I do any of the dreamy stuff, I have to have everything in the back end work. I need to have all of the payment schedules. I need to have all the invoices, the contracts. I need to have the whole workflow worked out before I touch any of the fun stuff. And that was hard for me because I was like, this is not why I'm going into fitness and all of these things. And, you know, you kind of kick in and drag your feet a little bit, but it was such a good thing to do it that way because then being able to get to the fun stuff ended up being the reward. And I also, of course, had a whole lot more to do with, you know, all of the design and the other fun things when I already had the most important stuff ironed out in the back end anyway.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. So what are you working on for the rest of 2017?
Holy smokes, isn't that a question? I would say, you know, the biggest thing, of course, is just, you know, I really have a heart for having kind of these ongoing content creation clients, as well as some of the bigger strategy and copywriting, you know, for websites projects. And so I like being able to have a blend of both, right? So I kind of have people that I'm talking to every month that I get to collaborate with all the time. And it's really awesome to have those relationships. But I also love being able to work with people on something that's really big and monumental and feels like, you know, such a big deal and really, really fun. So I'm really trying to still kind of figure out exactly what blend that looks like of, you know, who gets what time and what does that exactly look like. And so that'll be really fun to kind of figure out as I go. But another thing I'm really excited about too is, you know, of course I'm thinking about with kind of putting more effort into my service-based business, you know, you still really kind of want a little bit of that passive income stream, right? That can kind of work as you're working on other things. And it doesn't have to be like life-changing money, but it's awesome just to be able to also, you know, because I have built up this pretty large community, I felt like it was going to be really difficult to kind of say, oh, well, if you're not quite at this budget or you don't have this kind of project you want to work on, then you're probably not going to hear from me as much. You know, I really wanted to create some trainings and some videos and different things that could help them. So I'm really excited right now to be, you know, working on some monthly on-demand classes. So
nice.
You know, so they're like actionable and, you know, they're really great workshops, but at the same time, they're not as heavy as like a course, but they're just meaty enough to be able to help you with a lot of the topics that I want to talk about. And that's something that just kind of came to me really organically because I kept feeling like, you know, I really want to help these people that, you know, kind of come into my inbox and are like, please teach me all the things about business and about this and that. And, you know, I really want to be able to create more of those trainings, but I really did feel like, oh my gosh, I cannot do a course on all these topics. It would be crazy. And so I feel so good about this, you know, model of these on-demand classes that are super affordable, you know, like 15 to 35 bucks that people can just take, learn something from, and it's been so great so far. So yeah, I'm kind of doing a little bit of those two things, as well as, of course, you know, all of the kind of affiliate marketing and some of the other things that we do. But it'll be interesting. I'm excited for 2017 to see how everything ends up.
Yes, super fun. So where can we connect with you online to
oh my gosh,
keep up with all of this?
Well, of course, Twitter. I'm sure it's like
of course, that's number one,
right? Yeah. So I'm Kayla_Hollatz over on Twitter. But of course, you know, my business website is KaylaHollatz.com, and then my community website is CreateLounge.com. And we also meet, of course, for our Twitter chat on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Central at #CreateLounge. So anybody who's listening in who wants to talk with some other creative professionals and business owners that freaking get it. That's definitely where we are and where we meet. So thank you so much again, Jess, for having me on. It's been so fun chatting with you.
Yes, thank you again for doing this.